everyone, and welcome back to another insightful episode of MidSynapse Podcast Series, where we bring you candid conversations with healthcare leaders shaping the future of medicine today. I'm your host, Hetvi Shah, and today we're diving into a topic that touches millions of lives across the globe, which is breast cancers, the innovations in treatment and survivorship. And joining me is someone who stands at the forefront of this fight, Dr. Aarti Ilango, medical oncologist and medical director at Linus Oncology Institute in Delhi. She is not only an expert in advanced cancer care but also a leader in delivering patient centered, personalized treatment plans, integrating cutting edge therapies, and fostering multidisciplinary collaboration. So, Dr. Aarti, it is such a pleasure to have you alongside with me today for this conversation.
Thank you very much, Hetvi. That was a very pleasant introduction. Thank you very much. I would like to extend my gratitude to MedSynapse for this opportunity. I do understand and agree with you totally that breast cancer is a total global issue at this point of time, for that matter, any cancer in today's date. And breast cancer, being women, we would want to talk about it, want to reach out to more people, make sure it helps whosoever possible. That's the least we can do, I think.
True, true. That's very rightly mentioned, Doctor. So, Doctor, to start off, could you briefly share your journey in breast cancer care and the areas you're most passionate about?
So, my journey in breast cancer care has been closely knit with multiple patients, multiple teams, multidisciplinary teams. It has been patient care centered all from the start. So, if we have to understand what breast cancer care is like, it includes two perspectives. One is the physician's perspective, and second is the patient perspective. Any cancer for that matter, but breast cancer all the more because we are targeting that one individual of the family. Generally, women are that rock solid backbone of the family. Any strata, be it a lower socioeconomic strata, be it a higher socioeconomic strata, when the woman is disturbed in the family forefront, it takes a toll on everybody in that house, you know. So that way we have been dealing with a lot of patients. So teamwork includes teamwork of the medical background as well as in the patient's family background. So what I've been very passionate about in breast cancer perspective is early detection, which plays a huge role in the outcomes that we can deliver. And what is more important is equitable access to care. Everybody should have the same amount of access to care, because it is not a diagnosis of choice, you see. Nobody chooses that we want one cancer over the other or we want cancer or not. So when there is such a life-changing diagnosis, I think what is most crucial is that everybody has that access to care, to treatment. And what is more important is holistic support. It is not only that we have treated the patient, the disease is under control. It is not just that. It matters if the patient has been cured and the patient is still able to live a normal life. Do they feel like themselves before? Though it is not totally possible considering the surgery, considering the kind of things that are involved, but it is of paramount importance that they are able to restore quality of life. So these are my interests when it comes to breast cancer.
Yeah, I think that's truly inspiring also, and actually it's so powerful to always hear actually what fuels the dedication behind this expertise, and this is really important for breast cancer. So now, Doctor, triple negative breast cancers has always been a challenging subtype, but immunotherapy is changing that landscape. So what's your approach to integrating immunotherapy in triple negative breast cancers, and how do you go about selecting the right patients for it?
So, immunotherapy is definitely a game changer in oncology at this point of time, because all along we've been looking at chemotherapy, toxicity, you know. So, when you look at a patient, you can identify if the patient is a cancer survivor
Mhm.
on cancer treatment. It was very evident. But immunotherapy right now on the slab is giving us very different potentials. You know, it is not as toxic as chemotherapy, as in you will not be able to look at someone and tell that they're taking immunotherapy. It is like that, bare minimum. If we were to have this at a layman audience level also. So, and talking about what it can do medically, it is actually doing wonders in places where it is working, because it is a new molecule, not a very new molecule, but yes, potential is definitely, we are still tapping into its potential. And not, it is not that it will work on everybody. Like chemotherapy, we can give everybody. Immunotherapy is not for everybody. So that is how immunotherapy began. It came in from the metastatic setting, and now it is finding its way into curative intent treatments on a large scale, multiple sites, primary sites, including breast cancer. And yes, as you rightly mentioned, triple negative breast cancer is a notorious variant of breast cancer. It's a dreaded variant of breast cancer, if we were to be very honest. And if you look at how they present young patients, bad disease, when they start with rapid history, noticed a lump for a couple of days, rapidly increasing in size, and stuff like that. So when it comes to things like this, it is very essential that we know how to address it, because when it comes to cancer, the first hit is the best hit. Anybody would agree, you know. So when we have the disease, we target it best when we have it first. But apart from that, if you're looking at triple negative in today's era with immunotherapy as part of the conversation, yes, it has been accepted into standard of care, and it is actually doing what it has claimed to do. So in early triple negative, when we are talking about any tumor that is more than 1 centimeter, in that it has actually worked well. What was previously investigated, what has been investigated, is the PCR rate as to how much the cancer disappears when we do the surgery. So immunotherapy is not given standalone. Immunotherapy is given with chemotherapy. So we give it with the standard taxane, platinum, and anthracycline based chemotherapy. And after that, when we do surgery, what has been observed is initially only around 20 to 30%, there is a chance that only the amount of pathological response that we're able to attain, a tune of 50% increased when we use immunotherapy. This is backed by the evidence that we have Keynote 522. So when we're talking about that, PCR rates have significantly improved with immunotherapy. But is immunotherapy everybody's cup of tea? No. Because it comes with its own baggage. It is expensive. It is an expensive molecule. And it is not done with like we give 2 to 3 doses and we have results. No. It goes on from when we start neoadjuvant systemic therapy. For anybody, what I generally prefer is any tumor more than 1 centimeter, anybody with lymph node positive triple negative breast cancer, I would prefer to start with neoadjuvant chemotherapy. And with neoadjuvant chemotherapy, I would always prefer that it is discussed with the patient that there is an option of immunotherapy in today's era. It is essential that we know if affordable, if a patient is young and we're looking at years ahead without disease, I think this is a thing worth taking. So it is generally discussed with our patients. So when we start, it is started from the beginning of chemotherapy. We start with taxanes, we start with platinum, and then it is given for until a year totally. So with the chemotherapy and 9 doses post the surgery also. So this is how we give immunotherapy in early triple negative breast cancer. And I also understand the pharma is also extending its potential to make sure everybody avails it, which I think is a positive step in that direction. But I'm sure we still have a long way to go when we look at India, when we look at developing countries. I think we still have a long way to go.
I think that is so fascinating, and especially, as you mentioned, with the cost, also it comes with the triple negative breast cancer. So patient selection is also really important, and it can also make a huge difference, I would say. So now, doctor, speaking of neoadjuvant therapy, traditionally neoadjuvant systematic therapy has been used for tumor downstaging, but are you seeing it play a bigger role perhaps as a tool to guide adjuvant treatment intensity as well?
Yes, absolutely. That is a very appropriate question, because tumor downstaging was one of the primary motives of neoadjuvant chemotherapy. But if we also look at the other reasons why neoadjuvant chemotherapy was given, it also included in vivo testing. We do know that these work. So in the given patient, is it working? So that is also one of the other objectives of neoadjuvant chemotherapy. Though it is not, let's not take it as a testing field. It's not that way. But when we're giving neoadjuvant therapy in certain fields, like we're talking about breast cancer today, we really get to know if that certain patient has attained maximum benefit from the neoadjuvant chemotherapy. Do we have adequate response? Because when we are talking about triple negative breast cancer and when we are talking about HER2 positive breast cancer,
Hmm.
and for that matter, even hormone positive breast cancer, when we have given neoadjuvant chemotherapy based on indications, based on absolute evidence based medicine, and we have the patient taken up for surgery, post operatively, we find that a patient still has residual disease. So that tells us that this index patient is not going to fare too well left alone, because triple negative breast cancer, for the instance, if we have given say immunotherapy, if we have given neoadjuvant chemotherapy and the patient has residual disease, so it means in today's date, as per evidence, that we need to revamp our adjuvant treatment as well. Standard adjuvant modalities will still hold good, radiotherapy will still be given, but in addition to that, we need to radiotherapy as in based on indication, whether in
Hmm.
all the more reasons, even if we have to look at gray zones where radiotherapy is not a clear indication. Clear indications, definitely yes, but in triple negative, it is always best to err on the side of caution. So, in that, if we look at what Createx tells us, so there is a role of adjuvant capecitabine in triple negative breast cancer in patients who have residual disease post surgery, which means if anybody is having a component of invasive carcinoma in the post operative specimen, it means that the patient will benefit from 5-FU based therapy, 5-fluorouracil based therapy, which is capecitabine that we give as an oral agent. It is given for around 6 to 8 months. So that way, it has been seen that it has helped a long way. Recurrence free survival, a tend towards overall survival, and all of that. And in HER2 positive disease, when we have given HER2 positive disease trastuzumab, the monoclonal that we all know, has been a game changer in HER2 positive disease. And in today's date, we have so many new molecules. Yes, they all come with the baggage of cost. A lot of them have biosimilars approved and all that. But definitely, cost is a functioning parameter in these treatments. But if we focus on what it is doing for the patient in the long run, it is doing miracles, because
Hmm.
HER2 positive disease was also one of a dreaded subtype of breast cancer before the trastuzumab era, if we remember. But today, patients live well, they live long, they do very well. So, even in that subgroup of patients where we thought trastuzumab was changing paradigms massively, what we have observed is post surgery, if a patient is having residual disease after HER2 based therapy, they don't do as well as somebody who has pathological complete response. So the entire treatment paradigm shifted towards achieving optimal pathological complete response, which is when pertuzumab was also brought into play. It is also another HER2 targeted therapy. But despite everything, pathological complete responses are not to the tune of 100%. There is a good 30-40% of patients who will still not have pathological CR. So in those group of patients, we tend to tailor treatment. There is a molecule called TDM1, you know. So that tends to help patients better when they don't achieve pathological CR with trastuzumab and taxane-based therapy, which has already been given in the neoadjuvant setting. So these are ways in which the neoadjuvant chemotherapy lets us know if a certain patient is doing optimally well on the treatment that we have given. Do we need to improvise treatment, and what else can be done so that a curative intent patient remains a curative intent patient? That is of utmost importance.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting to know. And I think it is becoming like not just a preparatory step, but also like a strategic guidepost that it follows, what actually follows. So now, Doctor, survivorship is thankfully gaining more attention now, especially in breast cancer. So how do you structure follow-up for breast cancer survivors in a way that balances recurrent surveillance with quality of life?
You have a very valid point. Survivorship has improved significantly. The advancements in medical care are only speaking volumes if they have translated into survivorship. If we have
Right.
everything, but it is not helping us improve the number of people that we can still have alive post treatment, then I don't think we're really achieving what we wanted. So, given that medical advancements have really paved the way to survivorship now, it is more essential that we make patients feel the way they wanted to feel post treatment. It is not, the whole point is not just getting rid of the cancer, you know. So, you have to make them feel that they have restored quality of life. They have to feel that post treatment, when they are living their days, they have to live them well. So, quality is as important as quantity. I do not undermine that quantity is important, because in a certain given family, that patient is of paramount importance in their milieu of life. So, when we have given a scope for quantity with science, we also have to assure that we add to the quality as well. So, when we're looking at quality, we look at two things. We have to pick up recurrences early, as well as we have to make the patient feel that they are less of a patient when, you know, they have undergone adequate treatment. There is no point them feeling like patients all along. It is a very fine line when you communicate, because you have to tell them that they have a killer disease. You have to tell them that there is a chance that it comes back, but you also have to instill that hope that they're going to be fine. And it, you cannot just do it without making them feel bad, with making them feel optimally confident. So it involves very fine communication skills, human touch. What is important at every point of time is compassion, because the patient might get well, everything could be done, but if they've been traumatized by the diagnosis, by the treatment, and they have to live with it all through their life, then I don't think we've really done the job well. So, survivorship, we have to make sure that patients are routinely screened. What is a major part of breast cancer follow up is clinical examination. That is what is most important. So the patients in the first 2 to 3 years, for when, if we are talking about triple negative, if we are talking about HER2 positive, where they tend to behave a little bit more aggressively than a hormone positive breast cancer, we tend to call them at 2 to 3 months intervals for the first 2 to 3 years at least. A clinical examination is very essential. You get to know from the patient how the patient is feeling. You know, if there are very few minor points which might tell us that there is something wrong: patient not having adequate appetite, patient losing weight unintentionally, if we clinically tend to palpate something when they come for examination. So, clinical breast examination is very important. Mammogram screening every year is essential. But though we educate the patient for self breast examination, they do examine the contralateral breast. But you know, once traumatized by something that has given them a life changing diagnosis, patients tend to get scared to do that again. So, self breast examination,
Absolutely.
how much we emphasize in a scenario like the Indian scenario. Yes, the educated population takes it differently. But if you look at the rural population, which needs more focus, they tend to be scarred by the fact that I once felt a lump and it changed my life. So I don't want to go around palpating and find something else that might change it for me. So that is kind of a tricky zone. So when you call the patient, you call to find out how they're doing, one, clinically, two, also to know if they're psychologically better, if the whole point of holistic well-being is being attained. And if we have used molecules like HER2 targets, if we have used trastuzumab, anything of that form, then we also have to take care that the cardiac status is being monitored adequately, because they tend to have a cardiotoxic effect. So we need to monitor them effectively whenever we call the patient for follow-up at adequate intervals. The cardiac status needs to be monitored, so that we know that the patient is doing well on all fronts.
Correct. And I think I actually love that approach, and it is so important to think actually beyond treatment and focus on the quality of life post-treatment because, as you also mentioned, that is really, really important. So, Doctor, and now in many parts of the world, resource limitations, as you were also mentioning, can affect the quality of cancer care. So, from your experience, what innovations or adaptations can ensure breast cancer patients still receive optimal treatment in such settings?
So I think this will require a lot of collaboration with decision-making authorities uh,
Mm,
across the globe. It will require a lot of policy making changes, Because if the intention is to make sure everybody receives optimal medical care, then it requires a lot of processing. Because the biggest obstacle where patients cannot receive care is financial. The next, I would not say next, if we have to look at them parallelly, it is that early diagnosis is also very, very important. So we have to tailor ways to make sure early diagnosis is made, to make sure everybody is aware of a breast lump which is increasing in size, of what puts up that red flag. When do you need to go to a doctor? So early diagnosis is very, very important. Second, when we look at how everybody gets equitable care, if we look at it, though we have immunotherapy, though we have targeted therapy, uh, but chemotherapy still remains the backbone. So when we resource limited settings, we do not think that a patient might not get optimal care if we're not giving them the modern treatment. It is okay. There has been era when we have been using just chemotherapy and patients have been doing fairly well. So if we look at resource limited settings, chemotherapy is still the backbone. So for until the date when we have expiring patents, when we have biosimilars coming in, when we have government policies changing, for until then, I think chemotherapy is still the backbone for where we can introduce, for where there is scope, and anywhere that we can possibly introduce, we have to introduce state-of-the-art science. If there is immunotherapy, if it is targeted therapy, dual targeted therapy, it needs to be offered to the patient.
Yeah, I think that's such a practical perspective also, and I think it really shows that innovation isn't just about, drugs and newer technology, but also delivering ways of delivering care is also important. So now, Doctor, finally, for young oncologists listening who aspire to specialize in breast oncology, what advice would you give them as they shape their careers?
So what I would not say advise, what I would suggest to anybody practicing oncology, whether they want to start, whether they are practicing, what I feel is very important is being compassionate all along. Whether you are giving them medicine worth lakhs of rupees, whether you're giving them best supportive care, it really matters to the patient how you have addressed them when they walk into your clinic. It can really make a world of difference, and I'm sure anybody practicing oncology will definitely agree with me. And for young doctors who are striving to be breast oncologists, I would say what is important is when we are still looking at science pacing at massive speeds. Science is, one day we find something else in the guidelines, the other day the guidelines change, because that is the amount of vigor that we have in the scientists today. So when we, keep balance between the pace at which science is evolving, it is always very, very essential that we don't overshadow that with how the human touch to healthcare, continues to remain. Yes, it is very important because we cannot let science, the speed of science, the speed of evolution, overshadow that connection that we have with the patient. That is of utmost importance. We could be doing anything. The patient could be just receiving nothing but pain treatment. When we're talking about a metastatic care, we could be doing just giving them palliative care. But still, the patient feels very confident if you tell them, you're going to be fine. That word makes a lot of difference, no matter what treatment they're taking. They could be taking treatment which is worth lakhs. But still, if they don't have the confidence that the physician instills in them, especially where we are treading on a very fine line, where we are looking at AI overtaking humans at very, very different fronts of life, let it be anything. But what we can instill in a patient is that confidence, that compassion, and that sense of being there for them. And I think that is very, very essential for whatsoever hierarchy in the medical profession that we are in. If we are now budding oncologists, if we are aspiring to be oncologists, if we are in practice, I think what is essential that we retain is that human touch. To me, I think that matters most.
Yeah, I think AI, kind of AI or technology can actually replace the compassion humans get into. That's really wise, doctor. And I'm sure that a lot of doctors will also resonate this in and would agree on this. Doctor, as we wrap up today's session, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your passion, and these valuable insights with us on breast cancer. And actually, the treatment has come such a long way, and the future also holds more promise, I would say.
Thank you very much for this opportunity for helping me share my insights on breast cancer, on cancer care. I think it is essential that we reach out to a lot of lives because cancer is becoming the next pandemic that is taking the world over. There is a lot of education that is required. There is a lot of teamwork that is required. So I think it is very essential that everybody understands how to function as a team. For people aspiring to come in, it is very essential to work together with the doctors, with the patients. It is not a one-man show anymore. So it is
True.
very important. I would extend my gratitude to MedSynapse, to you for reaching out to me. Thank you very, very much for the opportunity.
Thank you for guiding us, Doctor. And to our audience, thank you for tuning into this episode. And remember, if you're a healthcare professional who's eager to delve deeper into medical topics or have questions, do not hesitate to join us on the Medicine Apps platform. Medicine Apps platform is not just a resource, it's a dynamic space where you can connect with your medical peers, participate in meaningful discussions, and contribute to the ongoing evolution of healthcare. So until next time, stay updated and stay connected.